I'm here today with Harold Schaffer of Kentwood, Michigan.
Yes.
The interviewer is Adam Jones for the Grand Valley State University Vendors History Project, and today's date is June 2nd, 2015. Now, Hal, could you begin with where and when were you born?
Flint, Michigan on February 3rd, 1925.
All right, and did you grow up there?
Yes.
Okay. And what'd your parents do for their occupations?
My parents,
Yeah.
well, both of them worked in the factories. They worked for General Motors in
Okay.
Flint.
Okay. Um, Now, when the Great Depression began, as the 30s progressed, did they have steady work through the Great Depression?
Did they have steady work?
Yeah, through the Great
Okay.
Depression.
I suppose maybe you ought to shut that down for a minute.
Yeah. All right. So, did your parents have steady work through the Great Depression?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you have any siblings?
Brother?
Okay. And did you graduate from high school?
Yes.
Okay. And what year was that?
1943.
1943.
Yep.
Okay. Now, as you're growing up in the 1930s, did you pay any attention to the news coming out of Europe or Asia pertaining to fighting happening there?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was listening to the radio Sunday morning when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and my folks were in the kitchen. This was a Sunday morning, and I just ran in. I was 16 years old at the time. I ran in the kitchen and told my folks, Japan just bombed us in Hawaii. And of course, they came in. We all listened to the radio and got the news from then on.
Okay. Now, since you've been paying attention to the news, was it a surprise to you that this attack had happened, or did you kind of figure the U.S. would eventually get involved?
Well, at my age, I knew there was things going on. I had heard of Hitler. I heard of Hitler, and there was news about the Japanese ambassadors being in Washington.
Yeah.
So I was from school and just general knowledge, listening to the news and stuff. I was aware that there was something going on, but I didn't know how serious it was at the time.
Okay. Now, you're still in high school when all this starts. What changes did you notice in Flint and just in high school?
Very little, none really.
Really? Okay.
The schools didn't. There was nothing going on,
Okay.
so the schools didn't have to tell. There wasn't anything to tell us really.
Right. Right. Did you eventually notice rationing go into effect?
The what going into effect?
Rationing.
Oh no. In fact, there was. I had heard a little bit about it, but I think basically what it amounted to was people were saying that if we get into a war, they're going to have to ration gasoline and all kind of things, off and on.
Oh, okay.
Nobody knew what exactly at that point.
Okay, so it was expected that if
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Now, you graduate in 1943, and you told me off camera you were in the service by August 1943. So when did you receive your draft notice?
July.
July.
In fact, I think it was on my discharge. I was actually in the service in July, but I didn't report for active duty until August.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was.
Okay. So what was the process of getting you into the service?
Well, at that time, you had to register for the draft, which I had. Prior to that, I had tried to enlist in the Air Force and didn't quite make it. I went to Selfridge Field with about 20 or 30 guys, and half of them made it and half of them didn't, and we don't know why. Everybody had passed their mental exams. That's why they sent us to Selfridge Field, and we were going there for our physical exams and also talking to flight surgeons and whatever. Like I said, half of the guys made it and half didn't. And they never did tell us. They just said, these are the guys that made it and these guys didn't. So after that happened, I was registered for the draft and just waited. Well, I waited about a month and I was drafted and didn't have to report for active duty till about first part of August.
Okay. So when you do report for duty, where do you go first?
Fort Custer,
Okay.
Battle Creek.
Okay. And what were they doing there? Just processing you?
Yeah, it was just Battle Creek was just a processing center.
Okay.
And, well, that was where that was where I was signed to the Air Corps, Army Air
Okay.
Corps. And in that process, after they issued you your clothing and decided what service you were going to go to, and the service, I was in the Army, period, so it was a matter of the Air Corps, the infantry, the all the various different types of units they had in the Army. Once I was assigned to the Air Corps, then they shipped me and probably, I remember, a dozen other guys. And the sergeant took us down to Amarillo, Texas.
Okay.
And at Amarillo, Texas, I did my basic training. And, well, that was where we learned to become soldiers.
Okay.
18 years old.
Now, what did basic training consist of for you?
Just what I told you.
Well-
Learn how to drill.
Okay. Yeah. Was there?
Take orders,
Yeah.
saluting and all that stuff. Everything that we never had to do before.
Okay.
So they taught us all the military aspects that we had to learn and go through at that stage of the game.
Okay.
And 18 years old, I just got out of high school.
So how was it for you to adjust to that?
No problem.
Oh,
No
really?
problem at all. I think at that stage of the game, it was a new whatever you want to call it, a new
Experience.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably a new experience, and it was different. And well, we just lived in barracks, ate in a mess hall,
Okay.
and did what they told us to.
All right. And it all kind of worked out for you.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember what was your impression of the drill sergeants?
They were pretty good. Yeah, they demanded attention, so that when they told you something, they wanted it to sink in. And well, some guys had trouble. Some of them, well, you've probably heard. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you haven't. You start with your left foot, and some guys didn't know what was their left foot. He said, "It's the one with your rock in your hand." So this drill sergeant put a rock in your left hand. So I mean, those are some of the things that happen, and silly as it may sound, it actually, there were some guys came off wherever they came from, and whatever.
Yeah, actually, were you training with mostly other draftees, or were there men that enlisted?
I don't know, tell you the truth. The guys were there. Now whether they were drafted or whether they enlisted and they threw us all together, because we were there for a specific reason. We were there to learn how the Army operates.
Okay.
And after everybody went through basic training, where you knew what was expected of you as a soldier, then they would start processing you, um, whether you went to the Army, to the Air Corps, or maybe to a infantry outfit, or whatever. But in our case, well, I don't think that was, no, that was done mostly at Battle Creek. In our case, it was Amarillo is what they do now in Texas. They still send kids down there today
Okay.
where for their basic training. And it was a matter of whether you were assigned to a whatever kind of a group the Air Force had, Air Corps actually. We were at that stage we were Army Air Corps. It was just a branch of the Army itself.
Okay.
And then after the war, that was when the Air Force was born. And now that's a separate service, and Army's a separate service, as you know, the Marines and Navy and all that.
All right. Now you eventually wind up in ordnance. So, what's the process of you getting into that?
Well, now there's a story behind. In Amarillo, the group that I was with, probably 20 guys, and most of the guys, when I say most of them, were in my group were from Michigan someplace. Okay,
Okay.
I was from Flint. A couple of the guys that I made friends with, and we became kind of buddies, if you will, were from Detroit, and we took our basic together, and in the process, that was where it was decided whether they were going to ship us. Well, they had us all set up for shipment to Harlingen, Texas, to gunnery school.
Okay.
And we had our orders cut and everything. And then about 2 days before we were supposed to ship out, they told me, "You're not going," meaning me specifically. And I said, "Why aren't?" They said, "Well, we're going to send you to flight school." And that was, remember, I told you earlier that I was going to go. I tried to enlist, and for whatever reason, didn't make it. Now, they told me that I was going to flight school, so they pulled my orders, and I stayed behind, and all the guys that I took my basic with, they all jumped on a train and went down to Harlingen, Texas, and they ended up B-24 schools, and I found out later they ended up in Italy, and I ended up in the Pacific. Anyway, they pulled me off, and I'm sitting there with just me and the drill instructor that we had. He was there too. He was waiting for the next group that they were going to send him to teach how to become soldiers. Well, he and we just hung around the PX and stuff for about a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, I think. They hadn't shipped anybody into them yet. So we became friends. We had the whole barracks to ourselves. And then all of a sudden they said, "We don't need pilots anymore." So they pulled me off. Now, I was a little perturbed then because they did this to me, and then they shipped my friends out, and here I am all by myself. I didn't know where I was going. Well, as I turned out, they shipped me to Augusta, Georgia. And when they shipped me there were a bunch of other guys coming in from Augusta. Am I going into too much detail here for you?
Oh no, this is more than fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
They shipped me to Augusta, and a bunch of guys were coming from all over the country. They were shipping them in too. And what the Army was doing, the Air Corps was doing, was making up these ordnance companies.
Okay.
In fact, there were 4 of them were made up in Augusta, Georgia. There was 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015. And basically we all did the same thing. We ended up, after we took our training and all that, we ended up doing various things that we were expected to do. And anyway, after we went through that phase, it was just a matter, at that stage of the game, it was a phase of becoming acquainted with the new group that we had. And this was, like I said, roughly a little over 200 guys. And this was 4 groups that had over 200 guys. And when we finally got settled and they knew who was going where or what, then they start shipping us out. Well, my company got shipped to Jackson, Mississippi. We were down at Jackson, Mississippi for a while, and we went through basically what we would be doing as a group.
Okay.
And that was where we kind of start getting into the technical aspect of it. Well, if you're familiar with rank at all, technicians, which was what we were classified as, you could have 1, 2, 3 stripes or 5 stripes or whatever, any number of stripes, but they would put a T on in it. I don't know if you
Okay.
And
Well, that's good for the.
all that said was, you were not a command type guy, like the infantry or some of the the guys who fought the dirty part of the war. But we were technicians and we had specialties in different things.
Okay.
So that's all a team meant. And you got
Yeah.
rank as far as, well, like anything else. In a job, you were did the basics, and then during the job, as you progressed and became expert in your field, so to speak, then they just increased your stripes.
Oh,
And
okay.
with more stripes, you got more pay, and that's what the guys look for. Pay. And a little easier too. But anyway, that's the amount. That's the reason for the T. Some people didn't know what the T means. That's why, as you notice on my discharge, it's Tech 4.
Oh, okay. And that's kind of similar to, it's similar to sergeant, but
Well, I
in
was
pay grade.
Yeah, I was a sergeant there, pay grade. My pay grade was the same as tech sergeant. I mean, I was a buck sergeant when I came out. My pay was the same as a buck sergeant in the infantry. The only thing is, I had a T on the bottom of my thing to show that I was a technician and not a foot soldier, so to speak.
Okay.
But that's what it amounted to. The Army was pretty much the same, no matter what you did. You got a job.
Yeah.
You either toted a rifle and went up front with the infantry, or they gave you a job because you knew how to do something that most people didn't know how to do, or some people couldn't. So you were specified as a technician, which was just a specialty. Other than that, after we left Jackson, we got to Jackson, then I went to school. They sent me to school to Aberdeen, Maryland.
Okay.
And I spent a month there, and then came back, and after that was when they shipped us out cross country from Jackson to San Francisco, and we were there maybe a week or so, and all it was enough to get us all there till they got a shipload full, and that's when we boarded ship and headed out.
Okay. Now, one quick question pertaining to your assignment to an ordnance company. Just to explain to civilians watching, what does an ordnance company do?
Well, ordnance can mean several things. Ordnance in the Air Corps can mean you load the bombs on the airplanes.
Okay.
In our case, we were called an ordnance-maintenance company.
Okay.
The maintenance kind of tells you separates us, we did maintenance, which is in the Army is more or less ordnance of any kind. You either fix things or bomb things or load bombs on things. Could mean anything. The maintenance part of it tells you, in my case, on my discharge, is that I was in a maintenance type organization, and we kind of fixed ground vehicles and stuff for the Air Corps, so that they could continue operating. Because their mechanics worked on the airplanes. We worked
Okay.
that was the difference. We were both in the Air Corps, but we fixed ground material, and they worked on airplanes.
Okay. Had you had any experience with working on machines when you were a kid?
No, but I'm pretty well. I don't have any trouble fixing things. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
I can fix things around the house. My dad was good with his hands, and I helped him, and so it was one of those things that maybe that's why they threw me in, because I was able to do things like that. And they put you where they think you can do the most good for them. So that's probably why.
Okay. And then just to establish a timeline, when do you reach San Francisco?
Uh, well, we were on a troop train, and we left Jackson. I'd say it probably took us 4 or 5 days, because the troop train, I mean, they were picking up cars as we were going along.
Okay.
And then we finally got to the embarkation point, which was, I forget the name of the base, air base that we were on. But anyway, that's where they put everybody, and then you stayed there until they were able to get all the stuff together, and then they just took you down, put you on the boat, and we must have had, oh my God, if I had to guess, I'd say we had 10,000-15,000 guys on that boat, because we actually lucked out. Why or how, I don't know, but I'm thankful to this day we did. We were on what would be called probably the today I guess you call it a Lido deck or something, which was, we were the top deck.
Okay.
And there was another deck on top which didn't have anything on, and that's where all the nurses and the doctors, and we had a field hospital group on our ship with us too, and that's where they usually sunbathed and all that stuff. And then we were on the next deck below, and that's where the mess hall was, and they all paraded by where our bunks were as they were going to the mess hall. And then there were decks, I don't know, they must have had 10, 12 decks down below. We had hell knows what kind. Some of the guys that were down in Torpedo Alley, or Torpedo Junction as we called it, because they were below the water line.
Okay.
Some of these poor guys, hell, they used to they'd bring them up and let them stand on deck for an hour or two to get some fresh air and stuff. Troop ships are no fun, but they got the guys moved around.
Yeah.
And well, like I said, and we were on what was during peacetime a cruise ship, belonged to the President line, and they made a troop ship out of it. And when we left for the South Pacific, we were the only one. We didn't even go in convoy. We were the only ship out there. And we left, and I'll never forget, as we passed under the Golden Gate, you look back and it says, "Welcome home, boys." And we were headed out the other direction.
Yeah.
So Anyway, that's the way, war's hell.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we went out, we were at sea for 30 days.
Wow.
Uh, Troop ships don't move fast, and we don't. The only place I remember we were was when we stopped at Hollandia, and we were there for a couple of weeks. It was one of those deals where we didn't do anything but go to bed, get up, go to bed, and get up every day,
Okay.
and hotter than hell. The well, when we got to Biak, as a matter of fact, we were only about 2 degrees off the equator, and the temperature there was anywhere from 110 to 120,
Wow.
and it was all humid.
Yeah.
And anyway, after we left Hollandia, well, as I told you earlier, we had heard that we were headed for Australia. Well, we never did make it. We got as far as Hollandia, and they stopped us there, and the guys that were running the war didn't know where they wanted to put us, because they didn't know just exactly where the war was at that stage of the game, I think. So they, instead of shipping us to Australia, they kept us in Hollandia area for a while, and then all of a sudden they said, okay, moving to Biak. Well, we got to Biak, and awful lot of guys at Biak. There was a bomber group, a B-24 bomber group, a B-25 bomber group, B-38 bomber squadron, and the Australians had a P-40 squadron, and the New Zealanders had a P-40 squadron. And then there was also a small group of not commercial, but well, like the C-46s and DC-3s. And they used them mostly to move stuff between the islands, because as you can see on the map, the islands they look small, but well, Biak had one of the longest runways, I think, in the area. It was
Okay.
the runway were as long as from what I remember, they were as long as the ones we have here at Ford, which was
Wow.
5,000 to 6,000 feet long, and these fighters and bombers and so forth had no problems with taking off and landing, and they were crushed coral too. I don't know if the Japanese had put it in or whether we had done it,
Okay.
because when we got there, they were in already. And when we got there, we unloaded our equipment, and we had to learn how to drive on the left side of the road, because this is a Netherlands island, and you drove on the opposite side of the road, and after a couple of days you got and if you saw somebody coming straight at you, you knew you were on the wrong side of the road. So, I mean, it was one of those things.
Yeah.
There were some humorous things, and then there were some sad things. But on the whole, now that I look back at it, the good Lord took care of me. I came back whole, thank goodness. There were a few guys in my outfit got killed. And some got hurt. But anyway, on the whole, we made it. Most of us made it.
Well, actually, one question I did want to ask you is, when did you actually get to Biak?
Well, where's it? Let me look at my.
Yeah, I think
Let me look at my.
kind of gave it said when you left the U.S.
Yeah, that'll tell me.
That'll give a good
Give me
idea.
a lot of the dates that you might
Yeah.
want to verify. Let's see. Well, my date of induction was July 22nd of '43. My actual uh, involvement where I was in the Army, I was August the 12th of '43.
Okay.
And then, let's see, I left the States on 27th of August of '44.
Okay.
And I went to the Pacific Theater operation of September 25 of '44.
Okay.
That takes care of that answer. What was the other one?
Oh, and then the other question was on Biak. What were the living conditions like? Were they pretty basic, or?
Well, when we got there, we had you see much how stuff we have here? Well, that
Yeah.
was it. We started from scratch. We lived in tents.
Okay.
We, we had a 5-man tent, and the guys all picked their tent mates, and we set up a village is all it was. We set up these tents, and when we set them up Army style, all the tents are in the line, and whatever, and we had cots, just, you've seen these cots where you fold them and take them
Yeah.
up. That was your bed. You had a mosquito net, because we had skeeters, and we had to take Aberdeen every day, which is a pill that kind of made you turn yellow. Everybody was yellow, kind of a yellow cast of your skin, because they didn't want you to get malaria. And then we had just one big tent. That was the company commander's office in the first sergeant. That was the so-called company base.
Okay.
And the rest of the guys, we just lived there. And then as we became adjusted to the place, we started doing things that made us more comfortable.
Okay.
And that was one of the things I think I mentioned to you on the phone. We built some of the guys, I wasn't involved in it, but the guys that made it, they were ingenious. Used a Jeep engine mounted on a rack with radiator and the whole bit on it. And it was hooked to a transmission. And I can't even remember how, but they had a 55-gallon drum that they kind of cut off about a third of it off the top, and they hooked it up to the transmission axle. And we had a guy assigned to do the laundry. That's all he did.
Okay.
And as guys had laundry to be taken care of, you just put it in a bag or wired it together somehow, and everything was marked with your serial number anyway, because we had all our clothes and everything were marked with serial numbers. And you just threw it there, and he washed it, and then they had a pile where it was finished clothes, and it was just damp, and then you took it to your tent and you hung it out on well, the tents all, if you've seen the tents, a 5-man tent, it's a big thing, and it's got an opening, and then the sides can go up.
Oh, okay.
Well, with the heat as bad as it was there, everybody had their tent, the sides went up, and we had them staked out so that there was breeze blowing through the tents.
Okay.
And anyway, when you got your laundry, you just brought it home, you took it out of the bag and hung it on on the ropes that were free, and that's where you dried your stuff out. Most guys, and myself included, all we had was socks, and if we had handkerchiefs, and probably some guys wore underwear and some guys didn't. and the rest of the guys cut their um, suntan pants down, made shorts out of them, or they took their fatigues and did the same thing. Everybody walked around with just shorts, shoes, and socks, basically. Some guys wore underwear, some guys didn't even wear socks. So you didn't have much laundry of any kind.
Okay.
And all you did was you threw it to the wash, and the guy just run it through, washed the sweat out of it, and probably if you've been working someplace where you had dirt all over it, he washed that out, gave it back to you, and that was it. But anyway, the way he worked it, he had to, when he was doing a load of clothes, he would press in the clutch by hand, start the motor. Well, he had the motor going. Put it in the first gear, second gear, or third gear, depending on what he was doing. First gear he wanted slow, so he'd put it in the first gear, and this would transmit out, and it would slosh the 55-gallon drum with the clothes in it at a slow speed, and then he might run that for 5-10 minutes, push the clutch back in, put it in reverse, and run it this way, okay? Then when it was all done, he pushed the clutch in, and he put it in third gear, and let that baby spin, and it spun it dry. So that's the way he did his laundry, and that's all he did all day long. He was just doing 200 guys' laundry, but he liked the job. And then we we even had hot water. We got some drop tanks, which were, I can't remember, 50, 75 gallons apiece, and we set them up gravity, so they were up on racks. And we had like a blowtorch affair. We had, well, like I said, we had a lot of things that were done, and with as many guys as we had to get maybe a couple of guys here, a couple of guys there, 2 or 3 guys over there. Why can't we do this, or why can't we do that? And they did it, because we had the equipment to do it, and we did it, and we made things comfortable for ourselves.
Yeah.
We made our own laundry. We had hot water. We even had showers. We had shower heads and the hot water. If guys wanted hot water, it was all gravity fed. And he used hot water when he made the wash. He'd take a bar of GI soap and slice it up into thin pieces and throw it in there, and that was what he used for soap.
Okay.
So there were a lot of things were made, I can't even remember. Some of the things that were out of this world, like this this washing machine. All he did was he'd get the stuff ready, put it in there, and depending on what stage he was in either in the slow wash or spin dry or whatever. And that's what he did. And then the Air Force, the Air Corps set us up a large tent. It was a hangar-sized tent. I don't know where they got it, but it was a hangar-sized tent. It was big enough where we could put all of our equipment in it. And in fact, some of the guys said they probably could get 2 or 3 fighter airplanes in it. It was that big. But we had the Air Corps gave us this tent because we had to have our equipment out of the rain, and of course being in that area on the equator, when it was raining, it rained. We didn't get too much rain, but you had to keep your stuff out of the air, out of the weather, so to speak. And it was actually, I guess it was a airplane hangar, because 2 ends were wide where you could pull the doors wide open. It was
Okay.
big. It was a humongous thing, and it had, I don't even know where they got the steel. They had kind of a cantilevered thing, so to speak. It went up like this on both sides, and they hung the canvas from that, from
Okay.
those things. And then they had, like I said, the doors are open, but the hangar was big enough where they figured they could get 2 or 3 fighter airplanes in there if they had to, but they set it up for us in this area that we had, and that was where we had all our equipment, and that was where we did our work, so that we were inside, so to speak, all the time, even though we had the doors, the doors were wide open. So that was, well, like I said when I talked to you earlier, it was a job. Everybody was there to do something. They sent something that I was working on. Might be 2 or 3 of us work on something, and we'd all work together and get it out, ship it out, and get another one. And just jobs coming in and out all the time, and that's the way it was with everybody. The guys work on airplanes. Hell, their airplane went out on a mission. They did nothing but sit around or maybe get some of their stuff ready, depending on whether they had stuff they had to work on. And they would wait until the airplane got back. When they got back, they fixed it up. Chances are it got shot up a little bit, or maybe they had to repair something. To them, it was a job too. You go down there and talk to these guys, and talk to them. It was same as us.
Yeah.
Something needed fixing. We fixed it. Once it was done, give me another one. And of course, when you had time off, and we had time off. They, depending on what was in the shop, maybe there wasn't too much in the shop. We'd take time off, or they'd usually, give us some time off. And anyway, when you had time off, you went screwing around. I used to go down to the airfield. Hell, I rode on B-25s and B-24s several times. I went down there and talked to the guy. Hey, you see a crew getting ready to go in an airplane, they'd say, where are you going? I'm just going out, try it out. He just fixed the engine on it or some damn thing. Care if I ride along? Get in the back. I get in the back, and hell, we used to go treetop, B-25s and 24s. Pilots usually like to skim along the tops of the trees. They like to fly close to the ground, but no problem. And I used to go down there and fool around with the line, talk to the guys there, whatever. Whenever you had time off, you just amuse yourself. If you had somebody else that you were a friend of, maybe the 2 of you go down. The other thing I think I told you about was we go down to the ocean, take some grenades with us, go fishing, and the little people knew when we were doing that, because they went down there too. That was the way they got fish. We go down, and they were smart enough to know that there was concussion there, and we knew we didn't want to hurt them. Hell, they used to wander through our camp, bumming cigarettes, doing anything. They were just part of the thing. Yeah. And they were the residents of the island. We were the visitors. So it was one of those things that they didn't. The Japanese were there before us. Chances are they treated them the same way we treated them. Maybe not. I don't know. But we used to, whenever we did that, and if they saw we had grenades with us, they'd go with us, and just kind of tell them, we'd tell them to move back or something. Or if they saw where the grenade was going, they knew enough to get the hell out of there, because the water itself there was concussion. The grenade went off underwater, but it didn't spray much because the water stopped it, but there was a concussion.
Yep.
And they had been around there enough where they knew that the concussion was only so far. When they saw where the grenade landed, then they swam away, and hell, they were excellent swimmers. And after the grenade went off, they come back towards the spot, and here were fish floating on top, and they'd put the fish in. They used to love it. Shit, they enjoyed that. But basically, that was, and like I said, you did what you could when you had your time off to just do what you did. Go visit maybe another outfit that was doing something, and well, we had a field hospital there too. Fortunately I never had to use it, but there was a field hospital there, and also the infantry used the island for R&R for some of their guys.
Okay.
And they sent them in there, and we'd go visit those guys and listen to their war stories. And they had war stories compared to us. I mean, our problem was probably bombing is where we got hurt. That's where our guys got killed, and our guys picked up a few Purple Hearts. But most of that was done by, other outfits called them Washing Machine Charlie. And this was just some single airplane going by, and he'd see lights on the ground, and he'd drop a bomb or two or three or four. And they were mostly bombs that would hurt people more than they were to bomb anything that was strategic as far as they were concerned. So that's the way we were coming home from a movie one night, and movies, those are the only entertainment we had there. They'd set up a movie screen someplace and show a movie, and the guys would all migrate there. Of course, that was when at night, and that's usually when this guy had come over, and he didn't have any specific night. We just hear him, and when you heard him, all you could do was just hope he didn't drop one on you. And a couple times we got it, so that's where we lost some guys, and lost some of the guys got Purple Hearts. But other than that, it wasn't a hell of a lot. It was a day-to-day operation. Fix it, ship it out, get another one in, fix it, ship it out. It was a job.
Yeah.
And somebody had to do it. That's why they have all these different type outfits. And that's all you can say. And just hope that you come through it and don't get hurt. And like I said, I was lucky. I was a lucky one. I came through it and didn't get hurt. Some of the guys didn't have that luck. But considering the conditions we lived in, and all the guys were in the same boat, so everybody was friendly.
Yeah.
You knew all the guys, like I told you, we had over 200 guys. I knew who was in my outfit. I knew damn near every one of their names. We lived together for a year, so
Oh, yeah.
you go down and visit us, maybe some guy you hadn't seen in a while, and had some time, just go down there and visit, whatever. But other than that, not a hell of a lot. And then when we moved out, we moved out.
Now, while you're still stationed on Biak, did you have any contact with the Australians or the New Zealanders?
Well, when I say contact, you might meet them.
Oh,
And
okay.
You might talk, just like you and I.
Yeah.
I might be wandering around down by the airstrip or something,
Yeah.
and I see you, and you see me, and you start talking to me, and you got a brogue to your voice or something. I say, "Where are you from?" And he'd say, "I'm from New Zealand," and he might tell me about his country, and I'd tell you about mine. Same way
Okay.
with the Australians. I saw one. I know when I wandered down to the airstrip one day, and I saw a tragic sight. This P-40, which was it was either Australian or New Zealand. I can't tell you because you're familiar with them, it's an airplane that taxis on the main gear, and then it's got a tail wheel.
Yep.
Well, these guys have to kind of do this back and forth because they can't see over the top, so they have
Oh,
to.
yeah.
So I'm walking down to towards the airstrip, and this poor sumbitch, whoever he was, taxied right into a full tanker of gasoline, exploded the whole ball of wax. The airplane, the truck, the tanker, and all it was just a big ball of flame and a hell of a big explosion, and nothing could be done. Everybody, you know, I was far enough where it didn't bother me. I was walking down towards it, and it kind of happened, and he was just doing what he normally does, taxiing back and forth so he could see what's in front of him, and he apparently didn't see the darn thing, and he taxied right into it and blew it up and blew himself up in the airplane. They got all the equipment down there and got him out, but there was nothing could be done. He was gone.
Yeah.
But it's stuff like that you remember, but it not very nice.
No. No, it's, people don't realize that stuff like that can happen away
Yeah.
from the front line.
Yep.
That just simple accidents. Things that. That's why we do this, is to give that idea that you can you're still in danger of
Yeah.
sacrificing your life for your country,
Yeah.
even 100+ miles away from where the actual fighting's happening.
You never know who's there.
Yeah.
Hell, we used to have Japanese used to come and steal food out of our
Okay.
mess hall. We had a mess hall, and hell, there were still Japs on the island. But they'd come in, they're stragglers, they'd sneak in and get food out, steal it. But hell, that happened to everybody.
So they weren't. So basically, at that point, they weren't trying to fight some kind of insurgency. They were just
No.
trying to survive.
They were trying to survive.
Okay.
They were living in caves back in the jungle. And well, you probably heard the jungle. Jungle is jungle, man.
Yeah.
Till you get it cleared, that stuff is like walking. You have to walk it. It's so hot and dry, hot and moist. The humidity
Yeah.
that plants just thrive in it,
Oh yeah.
and they grow together. And if you get into the deep part of the jungle shit, you have to walk your way through some of it. And whatever. But when we got there, they had bulldozers came in. The engineers came in with bulldozers, cleaned it just like I said. This floor, here you go. Build it. This is your home. And that's when we started putting up our tents and stuff. And that's about the way it was.
Okay. And then, how long did you wind up staying on Biak?
Oh, well, I'll go back to this thing then. I was, let's see. Well, all it gives me here is I spent a year and 24 days when I was in the States, and I spent a year, 5 months and 13 days when I was overseas.
Okay.
Well, I was at Biak probably a little over a year, I think.
Okay.
Then when we moved us to Clark Field, I figured I spent a year and a half in the Pacific.
Okay.
Yeah. And in that process, part of it was at Biak, about the first year was at Biak. And then when we moved to the Philippines, uh, most of the rest of the time was at Clark Field. And then they moved us to Manila, which is only about 60 miles away. And all we didn't even do anything in Manila. They moved us, we were all packed and ready to go. And that was when we figured we were gonna go to Saipan, and we didn't know whether we were gonna go by ship or by air. But we had all our equipment packed and on trucks and ready to move. And we stayed in the Manila area probably about, 3-4 weeks or something like that, and maybe not even that long. And then about that time, the war was kind of going down. And then when you heard the war was over, then we didn't know what was going to happen. We figured we weren't going any longer, just a matter how long
Yeah.
were we going to have to stay here before they moved us out.
Okay. Now, when you moved up to the Philippines, you got there considerably after the invasion had taken place and things had calmed down. But was there still stuff happening on the islands with the Japanese?
No, it was by the time we got there, when we hit Clark Field, we owned Clark.
Okay.
In fact, Clark was ours before the Japanese got it.
Yeah.
And the Japanese took it, and when he took it back from them. And, well, Clark is still the main base right now.
Yep.
I know I talked, it's funny, I was talking to a gal, what the hell was I looking for? I was talking to somebody about, I think I had a Comcast bill or something, and I called, and I was calling somebody, and she said, I'm so-and-so, and I said, where are you located? She said, I'm in Manila. I said, oh, how was it there? I said, I was there in your country about 70-some years ago. So, and I had talked to some other people too. I had talked to 2-3 times of people, commercial, calling them, I'm sure you had it too. I've talked to people in India, I've talked to people in the Philippines, I've talked to people in, hell knows where, somewhere down in the Caribbean. But usually when I talk to somebody, and especially if their voice has got a little different tone to it, I'll ask them, most of the time I ask them where they are anyway, and I ask them who they are, because I figure I want to know who I'm talking to and where they are, so if I have to call them back,
Yeah.
so on. But yeah, I asked that gal, and she said, oh, it's nice here. I said, it's raining here, or whatever.
Now, while you were in the Philippines, did you have any contact with the Filipino civilians?
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah, in fact, they worked at Clark Field.
Okay.
Some of them even worked for us.
Okay.
They did odd jobs for us, and usually they had some of the people worked in the mess hall, helped the cooks,
Okay.
and most of the time they just kind of did go for jobs for in a shop for us
Okay.
and stuff like that. But yeah, we mingled with them all the time. I mean, they knew who we were, and I mean, of course, Philippines was one of our possessions anyway before the war. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things that there was no problem. They were glad to see us there.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I'm gonna switch tapes real quick because I'm just about the end of this one. All right, so we're picking up from when you were in the Philippines at Clark Field, approaching the end of the war. So, what were you doing at Clark Field for that last few
Well,
months?
same thing we did at Biak. It was just a matter of a different place.
Okay.
Because Clark was actually was a bigger, well, I wouldn't say it was bigger because Biak was really a big air base. When you get it'd be 24s and 25s and fighter, P-38s and P-40s in a big group on an island, they take up a hell of a lot of space. And these were actual bomber groups, fighter groups. I don't know if you've ever heard of Richard Bong. Is that
Yeah.
he was
Yeah, I just talked to a guy yesterday who talked about him.
yeah, he was on Biak. He was the ace. In fact, he was the ace at in the Pacific Theater. He'd come in. In fact, we were right on final approach. Our camp was right on final approach to the air base. And when the fighters came back, they'd come back at treetop level, and then they do this, and they do a victory roll, depending on how many airplanes they shot down. And we didn't know whose airplane was who, but we knew Bong was there, and these guys would come in and maybe do one loop. Some of them would just go up, and then that was it. They didn't get anybody, and they'd just go around and get back into flight pattern and make their landing. Some guys would make 2 or 3 flips, so you knew they were lucky. They used to, most of the time when they left from Biak, they used to go to Halmahera and there's another area that they used to go back and forth, and that was about 800 miles or so from where we were too. So when they went out, they came back in. Usually they went out first thing in the morning. Now they'd be leaving about anywhere from 5 to 7 in the morning. And when they left, depending on which way they were taking off, they'd be buzzing right over the top of us. And I'm talking all the bombers, all the fighters, and the whole ball of wax. So you had airplanes buzzing across, and then when they come back, the same thing. They come back and depending on which way they landing, they might go right over us, or they go around and come in the other way. But they had one hell of a big runway, and that was probably one of the reasons why they had them all based there, because the runway was big enough. In fact, I know a couple times I went out there and saw guys taking off, and the Australians and New Zealanders fighter pilots were crazy some bitches. They'd sit side by side and they'd take off together. There were some good times. There were some good times, I'll say that. When I say good times, they were just, you could talk to these guys. Everybody was there for a reason.
Yeah.
Nobody was, if they bitched, all it was, wonder when the hell I'm going home. That's about it.
Yeah.
Other than that, hey, what are you guys doing today? You want to go fishing? What are you doing today? Let's go for a ride. Whatever. It was one of those things that
Yeah.
everybody put up with it because everybody was in the same boat. So no matter whether you were flying or fixing airplanes or flying, and I mean just fixing trucks or some different thing, everybody was there for a job and got their job done, and that was it. It's like the kids have today in school. There's a bully, somebody has to whip his ass. Well, we had bully out there, we had to whip his ass. Same difference.
Pretty much.
They had one in Europe. In fact, we had some of the guys, that was a funny thing. We had, after the war ended, the war in Europe ended before ours did in Japan, in Pacific, and they shipped some of these guys over. Some of the guys that were in Europe. And when they got there, we got to talking to them, and they say, "What do you guys do for fun or whatever you want to call it? You're looking at it. Where's the cities? There are no cities here, man. It's jungle." They were used to fighting cities in Europe.
Being able to go to somewhere.
All they had was roads, jungle, and big open patches that were that were parked airplanes or people in tents, and that's all it amounted to. And they said, well, I don't know how the hell you guys did it. Well, we're here, aren't we? Yeah, and that was it. And that's as far as it went. But they, when they first got there, they had, some of the guys had difficulty in not being able to see cities like they were used to seeing.
Yeah.
And here, hey, most people walked. Either that you had a walker or you had a Jeep or a truck or something, you could go wherever you wanted to. But hell, when I was off, most of the time I walked. Of course, the field wasn't that far. It wasn't even as far as from here to Fort Airport to me, because we were pretty close to the, as I told you, we, on the final approach, coming in, they come right over us, and no problem. So any place you went, you walked, or you walked over to a friend's house or a tent or some darn thing, or you just walked just to get a change of scenery. And most of the time, when I wanted, I'd go down by the airfield and talk to the guys there, or see if there's anybody going out, jump on an airplane, go for a ride and come back. And now when I think about it, you know, you get these guys fix an airplane engine, and then they took it out to try it out. You know, I could have went out with them and not come back. Whatever, but to me it was a change of scenery.
It was something to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, by the time you reached the Philippines, were you under the impression that the war was going to end and it was going to end in our favor?
Yeah, I think it was a matter of how long is it going to take?
Yeah.
Because we knew that we were progressing towards Japan,
Yeah.
and it was, well, how long is it going to how long am I going to have to stay out here? Well, then when we didn't even know what the hell a bomb was. I mean, when because we had never heard of it. And in fact, when we were at Biak, that was when we found out, I believe it was President Roosevelt died. And then Truman became the president, and we didn't know, nobody said anything about the bomb. And then later on we heard about it, and then there was talk about, hey, that might end the war. I don't know, and all that. Because a lot of the news we got, well, it wasn't even news. Guys might get stuff in their mail from their parents and stuff. Well, this and this is happening. How you guys doing over there? You know, stuff like that. Or it was rumor. Some guy would maybe he went to Australia, one of the pilots or some. That was another thing we used to do. If a crew had a problem and they wanted a piece of machinery, so-called fixed, and couldn't go through the stage of having their commander request it and going through all the paperwork that just, well, you know how this, well, you wouldn't know how the service is full of paperwork. You have to go through the process.
Okay.
Well, you get these guys, they might have a piece of equipment that they need bad, and they can't get it through fast enough. They might send one of their commanders over, especially the flying groups. They fly in, hey, can you guys fix this up? When are you going to Australia? We got a plane going next week. Well, we think we can probably get something done if you can help us get something from Australia, like eggs or beef. We used to barter with them that way.
Okay.
And we got fresh eggs from Australia, and 200 men, it wasn't just a dozen eggs. They bring us a whole damn carton of eggs. Well, what they did was they'd go down there. Usually they went down for supplies because we sure as hell didn't have any, couldn't grow anything there. So whenever the Air Force needed something or anybody needs something, they had like I told you, they were not commercial, but these C-46s and so forth that were based there. That's what they used them for. If they need supplies, they go down to Australia to the supply stations that the Army and Air Corps had down there,
Yep.
and they just requisition that stuff, put it on the airplane, and bring it back. They did it for themselves, and they did it for other outfits. Of course, they had to all go through the requisition process, except when they wanted something done, that was when we used our muscle and said, hey, we can fix that if you think you can get us such and such. And we had eggs. We probably got eggs half a dozen times in the year we were there. We had a few sides of beef where they brought back, and we ended up having steaks and stuff like that. But we got that because these guys come in and wanted their equipment fixed, and they were going down to Australia, and I don't know what kind of a connection they had down there, but as long as they got it and brought it back to us, we took care of them and they took care of us. And so that was the way a lot of that stuff worked. These guys helped each other. Somebody might come in and just had to have something and had nothing to trade for. What the hell, bring it over, we'll fix it for you, whatever the hell. So, unless we had a backlog of stuff, we couldn't get at it.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. The Army was pretty, the Air Corps was pretty, it was just like I said, it was just a job. Everybody was there to do a job. They did their job day to day, day after day. And when am I going home? That's all they had to think about. Other than that, that was it. But the Filipinos, they were all friendly. I had no problem with them. They were glad to see us, and other than that, when we left, no big deal. They left, they got their island back, and that was it.
Okay. Now, when Japan finally does surrender, what was the reaction of you guys and of the Filipinos?
Well, our reaction was, I just said it.
Yeah.
When are we going home?
Yeah.
As far as the Filipinos, there wasn't too much said, but I think it was one of those things that, in one respect, they were glad they're going to get their homeland back. In another one, they had it pretty good when we were there because, you know, some of the guys had girlfriends and they got chocolate and they got food. You know, they got stuff from the service through their boyfriends or husbands or whatever. Some of them got married while they're there.
Okay.
It was one of those things that some were happy to see us there, and some didn't really give a damn. They just it was a day-to-day of their operation.
Yeah.
They just whoever was here, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Now, and you talked about earlier, after the war was done, you were sent over to Nichols Field, which was also on the Philippines.
Yeah, that Nichols Field is to Manila what Fort is to Grand Rapids.
Okay.
It was their commercial airport.
Okay.
And we were there because probably we didn't, when I say Nichols Field, that was where they sent us to stay while we were waiting. And that was when I told you that we thought we were going to Saipan. Well, we had mustered all our equipment and stuff at Nichols in preparation to either go on a ship to go to Saipan, or we didn't know whether they were going to air us to Saipan or how.
Okay.
But they had just mustered us down there with all our equipment to wait until they decided what was happening. And it was at that point, we were there probably 2-3 weeks or so, and course, there were all kind of rumors, you know. Somebody, they kind of talked about the bomb, but no one knew what the hell they were talking about.
Yeah.
We didn't know, we had no idea what they meant when they said the bomb. But then when they said the war ended, then we didn't give a damn whether it was, you know, what it was, just so as we get home.
Yeah. So how long did you have to wait between when the war ended and when you got sent back to the United States? I think it says
Well, here, it says right on here. I came back February of 46.
okay. So, I think you mentioned earlier too that you, from in the Philippines, you boarded a Liberty ship
Mm-hmm.
and then sailed back to the United States, and you managed to avoid getting placed on an aircraft carrier because it wound up in a typhoon.
Yeah. We were on the Liberty ship probably, maybe a couple of weeks. I can't remember, but
Yeah, that sounds about right.
we went from when they boarded us on the Liberty ship. We came back. We had a storm too. Of course, it was kind of the you might say the tail end or what was left of the typhoon, and the seas were pretty rough. And otherwise, we came through. No problem. Like I said, we were there at sea probably a couple of weeks. But other than that, nothing spectacular. We got hit by one big, I don't know what the hell it was, but it sounded like the whole ship had collapsed. During the storm, this wave must have hit us or something, and the whole ship just shuddered. All the guys just, what the hell was that? You know, when those things.
Well, yeah.
But it lasted about that long because, you know, those humongous waves,
Oh yeah.
you get a typhoon and they're not anything
Nothing to sneeze at.
no.
Okay. So, and then you pulled into San Pedro Harbor at Los Angeles. I think you mentioned to me.
San Pedro.
Yep. And then you talked about being fed by
Yeah,
German POW.
We were there just long enough to feed us and kind of get us settled down and have them determine as to who's going where and what. That's about all it was.
Okay.
We weren't there more than, I would say, hell, maybe a week if we were that long.
You
Because
talk-
they were getting, all these guys are coming back and they were just doing the paperwork as fast as they could to get them the hell out of there. Cause
Yeah.
they were all going to pile in there
Yeah.
as they were coming back.
Now you talked a little bit about the German POWs that were serving you in the mess hall.
Yeah.
They would antagonize you a little bit. Do you want to talk about that again?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that for on the tape?
Well, they just did basically what I told you. They would give you a little bit of food. You'd be going through the chow line and they give you a little bit of food, and unless you raised hell with them, they just have you move along. And if you didn't raise hell with them, if you raised hell with them, then they give you more. Well, they had that sly smile on their face, like got you pissed off at me, and, you know, stuff like that. But it was their way of saying that, hey, I got it over you because I'm on this side and I can dish out as much. And then when the guys just got back from overseas, they start giving them a flock of crap. They just say, how'd you like to get your head bashed in or something, and whatever. You know, some guys about ready to go right over the chow line and get them. Other guys just say, put more on there, and you stay there until you had enough. They might just put a little bit every time, you know, just to aggravate the hell out of you. But that was the way it was. Some of those guys, same guys are probably living here or live here in the States and are dead here in the States.
Yeah.
But
All right. So from Los Angeles, you're taken back to, you said, Fort Sheridan.
from San Diego, San Pedro.
Yeah, you're taken to.
Yeah, they sent me to Sheridan, and I think that's where, I think that's what it says here, hang on.
Okay.
Longevity. 1480. Date of, let me get out, February 46, 1 month after date of next March of 46. No, it didn't say.
Okay, well that's fine. But the point is that you get discharged in February '46,
Yeah.
and then
And then after that, I was on my own. I jumped on a bus and came home
okay,
to Flint.
and
And my folks are living in Flint, and that's where I ended up.
okay,
In Flint, I went to school in Flint after I got out of the service, and then, well, I went to school in Kansas City,
okay,
and then I also went to school in Ann Arbor for a while. No, in Lansing for a while. Other than that, then after that it was mostly work. I got jobs,
okay.
moved around, lived in Wisconsin, lived in Lansing, lived in Grand Rapids, and been here ever since.
All right. And what'd you wind up studying in college?
Engineering.
Oh, okay.
I was engineering,
Oh,
and I
makes
ended
sense.
up in well, I took 2 years of college at Flint Junior College.
Okay.
You want to get involved into that too?
Oh, I mean, yeah, if you want, that's fine.
Well, uh, you're getting my life story. Um, I ended up going to school in Kansas City, which was they had an airline school there, and I ended up finishing school there and got a job with an airline, and I was in the airline industry for about 14 years.
Okay.
Then I went to work for Ford in Detroit when I lived in Detroit. And then I hit the road. I was on the road for about 5 or 6 years.
Oh, okay.
And after I got off the road, I ended up, well, the boss I had on the road talked to me. I was living in Detroit at the time. And the boss called, the guy I worked with when I was on the road, says, "What are you doing?" I said, looking for work, because the company that he had worked for and I had worked for went out of business. It was a consulting company. And he said, "You want to move to Grand Rapids? Rapistan, well, I'm working for them, and they can use you if you want to move to Grand Rapids." I said, "Sure." So I moved to Grand Rapids, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. Now, just kind of as a closing question, when you look back on your time in the service and your time overseas, what kind of impact do you think that had on you?
What kind of what?
What kind of impact did that have on you?
Uh, Well, at the time, um, I didn't mind it that much.
Okay.
Sure, I never had that was one of the things, I never had a furlough. In the year, 2.5 years I was in the service, I never had a furlough. Seemed like I was moving, the service was moving me around all the time,
Yeah.
and never got a furlough. And I just, as long as I didn't, I didn't mind being in the service. In fact, at one time, before I got discharged, I even thought about staying in the service. And then I thought, nah. So I just, I left the service, and that was when I came home and went to school. And after I was with the airlines, I went to work for Ford, and then I moved to Grand Rapids. And I worked for a Michigan Bulb Company here in town, and they went out of business. Every place I went got out of business. The companies either quit or they moved. So that's what happened. I don't know.
All right.
But I've been retired now for 20-some years, so I'm doing well. I'm not complaining a bit. The good Lord's taking care of me all the time I've been on earth. He's doing well by me, so I can't complain a bit. My life has been fine. I've been some hard spots, but I didn't expect life to be a bowl of cherries.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Well, all right. Well, then I want to say thank you for taking the time to be interviewed today.
Okay, sure.
And thank you for your service.
You bet.
Thank you. All right, let's see. I'll turn this on.
All I can say is, like I told everybody when we went on that trip, you're welcome. I never shook so damn many hands. All from about a 2-week-old baby to about a 75-year-old or 95-year-old guy.
Wow.
When I went to,
when you went down to D.C.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That trip. And I'm telling you, we were greeted by people every place we went. Every place. It was really something.
Well, it's something you guys deserve.
Something I'll never forget. You don't think about it.
You guys pretty much saved the world.
We just did our job.
Yeah.
Well, hell, like I said, 18 years old, graduated from high school, and a month I was in uniform. What the hell is this?
I'm 21. I don't think I can handle it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the war that we fought was an entirely different war than we've had the Korean War, we've had the Vietnam War, we've had the Desert War, the one with Bush the father, and then we had the one that Bush the son got us into, and now we're in this war. I think the war we're fighting, and I wouldn't even call it a war. It's a war on humanity, if you will, more than it is a war. Nobody's trying to accomplish anything other than I don't know what you'd call them, the ISIS and all the names that they give them. They just don't. They don't fight as a war. They're out to harm people, maim people. It's different. It's different. And the war that we fought, you knew who your enemy was.
Yeah.
He had slant eyes and was wearing a uniform. In Europe, he wore a uniform, had blonde hair usually.
Yeah.
If he was of the superior race that Hitler said they were.
Yeah.
But you knew what you were up against. Today, these kids go out, hell, they'll have a step on anything and have half their body blown away or part of their body blown away. And it's terrible.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for them. I really, it's disgusting what the hell they're doing, what human race is doing to itself.
Yeah.